Okay, good evening. I'd like to reconvene the meeting and welcome you to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 board meeting for July 10th. Would the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'd like to thank you for attending tonight. Before we get going, I'd just like to introduce tonight's participants. Starting at my far right is Katie Ebner, our business manager. Miss Lynn Town, clerk of the board. I'd like to welcome new to the dais here, Dr. Stan Olson, superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Dave Eubanks, vice chair. Mrs. Lisa May, board member. Mrs. Tamber Pickford, board member. Mr. Tom Hearn, board member, and my name is Casey Morris-Earl. I'm currently our chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues will be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through the clerk of the board. Okay, first up, our clerk of the board is going to administer the oath of office to Lisa May and Tom Hearn and Dave Eubanks. Okay.
That's the old adage, ladies first, but zone one, so we got it covered. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
That I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
And I will faithfully discharge the duties
of school board trustee
of school board trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Mr. Eubanks.
Do I need a tie for this?
That's why I asked.
Right.
Raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United
that I
States
will
of America
support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of school board trustee
of school board trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
We're done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And Mr. Hearn. Who's wearing a tie?
You learn something.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of school board trustee
of school board trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Okay, well, welcome again, Lisa May, and welcome back, Tom and Dave. Glad you're with us for another 4 years. And we were live there, if you didn't know that. We were on Facebook Live. That's the first time we've done that, I think, for the meeting. So thank you, Victoria, for coming down and taking care of that. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So we have a little housekeeping since this is our annual meeting. for our reorganization of the Board of Trustees. I believe Ms. Town presented a number of motions here, but we need to elect our board chair, a vice chair, and then appoint our treasurer, clerk, and acting clerk, and so on. So,
On the line here?
yeah. So we'll start with board chair. And before we do that, I'd just like to say thank you. I've appreciated being the board chair for the last year and would be happy to do so again, but serve at the wish of the board, so whatever we'd like to do there.
Well, how about we do it again?
I was afraid someone was going to say that, but thank you.
It would be worse if nobody said a word.
True.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Casey to be the board chair for the second year.
Second.
Do we need to
Here,
do
she
this
wants
right
your
here?
formal,
The
yes.
formal right here on the paper.
Oh, we have to write it down?
No, you got to read that, Dave.
Oh, I move to elect Casey Morris Rowe board chair for the 17-18 school year.
Second.
Okay, thank you both. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries. On to vice chair here. Mr. Eubanks, is there any volunteers for vice chair this year? Is there someone who wants to be vice chair?
It's not me. But I'll nominate someone if you're okay with that. Can I do that twice? I move to elect Tom Hearn, board vice chair for the 17-18 school year.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Tom, you want to vote first? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. From here, they're pretty much printed out for us. Dave, you want to stay on a roll here?
I move to elect treasurer for the 2017-2018 school year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Why don't you take the
Aye.
next one?
Okay.
Here. You got it?
I move to elect Lynn Town clerk of the board for the 2017-2018 school year.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I move to appoint Pamela Westberg as acting clerk in the event of the absence of the board clerk for the 2017-2018 school year.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Do the next one.
Yep.
I move that the regular meeting of the board for the 2017-2018 school year be the first Monday of the month at 5 p.m. at the Midtown Center Meeting Room, 1505 North Fifth Street, Coeur d'Alene, unless otherwise posted for public notice in advance of the meeting.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
You want to take that one?
I can't make a motion, but
Okay.
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
I move that the third Monday of the month be set aside for special meetings, workshops, and/or forums as needed.
Second that?
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Want to take the last one?
I'll take the last one, so a long one.
I move to designate the Coeur d'Alene City Hall lobby as a public place for posting of this board's public notices. Additionally, notices will be posted in the main lobby of the District Administration Office, Midtown Center Meeting Room, entrance door, and the District 271 website, unless circumstances prevent access to the website. The Coeur d'Alene Press and the Spokesman Review papers will be provided the meeting agendas at the time of the posting.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. One last thing, we'll handle this after the meeting, but always at this meeting, we sign our code of ethics. So at the end of this meeting, Lynn will bring that forward to us so we can sign and have a fresh copy of that. If anyone's interested, that code of ethics is posted in our policy section on our district website under board. I think it's in section 1000.
Policy 1600.
Okay, thank you. Policy 1600. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes for June 5th, June 7th, June 13th, June 16th, June 19th, and June 26th?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, board comments. I'm going to go first here, I think. And first, I just want to take this opportunity under the board comments for a couple things. First off, I'd like to welcome Dr. Stan Olson up here. Although I did that earlier, it's a pleasure to have you join us, and we're all excited to have you on board here with us, Dr. Olson. So again, thank you for being here and joining and being part of our team. I'd also like to introduce in the back there Chris Shipley, who's here visiting us tonight. He'll be starting 2 weeks from today as our new Director of Finance and Operations. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for being here tonight. And then finally, I'd just like to thank Dr. Cottle sitting up front here for her eagerness to serve the past few months in the acting superintendent role. So thank you again. I know we've all told you that, but thank you. We appreciate it. And Dave, I think you have something.
Yes, I think I'm under observations having to do with policy 5620. And this is serious stuff. Not that what we've talked about so far isn't serious, but I have some stuff to share with you that is worth putting some thought into. With nearly 1,300 employees in the Coeur d'Alene School District, experts will tell you there is a statistical certainty of our having a few bullies at least on the payroll. Having worked in the district for some 20 years now, first as a professional educator and these last 4 years as a board trustee, I can honestly tell you that, yep, it's true, we do have a few bullies in our 1,300 employees. But what we don't have at this time anyway, is a board bullying policy with clearly defined boundaries and expectations, and with procedures for adequately reining in a workplace bully, and if necessary, regardless of his or her position in the district, for termination of their employment. Current board policy 5620, the principal policy that speaks to staff protection, bizarrely addresses assault and battery as if the criminal code doesn't already apply, and verbal abuse without any definition of what that might be. And that's it. Nothing else is covered. There is no mention of undermining and humiliating colleagues, no word about non-sexually harassing our employees to tears, and no concern about the intimidation of some perfectly fine educators, some of whom end up in therapy and who end up also resigning. My fellow trustees, this is a district problem in need of a thorough and timely resolution, hopefully before classes resume in September. At this time, I would ask that a comprehensive revision of Policy 5620 be placed on the agenda for our August board meeting, if not sooner, with information, discussion, action, and adoption to follow as soon as possible thereafter. We already have a wonderful and very successful zero tolerance policy for student bullying in our district. In fact, it's the gold standard for the entire region. I believe our employees, every single one of them, are entitled to nothing less. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Eubanks. Carrie, are you speaking for the CEA tonight? No? Okay. Oh, Derek, sorry, I didn't even see you there. Sorry. Well, Mr. Colas, welcome.
Am I on? As of 3 hours and 16 minutes ago, I'm no longer the CEA president. Give or take a few minutes. Thank you, trustees and district administration, for allowing me to present tonight. Bruce Twitchell just returned from NEARA in Boston and had a family commitment tonight, so he could not be here. As the immediate past CEA president, I will occasionally assume duties that he designates to me. That's one of the benefits or costs of my position. Welcome, Dr. Olson. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your willingness to meet with me last week on short notice, and I think you will be a great asset to the district. Congratulations on the CEA's ratification of the agreement today. As I said, my term ended officially at about 2 o'clock when they counted the votes. We had a 95% approval rating with a quorum, and so that was very good. This year's agreement is very strong in a number of ways for both the district and the CEA and staff members around the district. Probably the biggest thing that affects everybody from students to the community is we are taking steps to address elementary prep time. And that has been a major concern for a number of years, and it's good that we got to an agreement, and hopefully the results of that will be positive for all staff. We began the process of doing longevity stipends for our most experienced staff so they can their income can keep up with inflation, which hasn't been the case for quite a while. On the district side, I think the district is in very strong financial position as a result of the agreement. We know that the district's revenue projections are low. We know that they also generally estimate high on expenses. The CEA believes that the agreement gives the district fiscal flexibility and space to accomplish numerous goals and address unanticipated circumstances as we open Hayden Lake Elementary and search for a new superintendent. Hopefully the legislature will continue its efforts to increase funding to districts, and we can together address the ongoing teacher shortage and dearth of high-quality applicants in various high-need areas. One of the CEA's concerns as the team negotiated and as we discussed with our members today is the increase in staff in the district relative to the salary-based apportionment allocation. The current budget increases the number of staff who are not funded by SBA money by a significant number. This is a long-term concern for all staff since it decreases resources available for current employees into the future, compounding recruitment and retention issues. We appreciate that the trustees are aware of this issue and will monitor it going forward. Let's see. As the CEA's immediate past president, I will remain actively involved with CEA leadership team and as a resource to the trustees and the district administration should I be needed. It's important to all of us to protect and expand a culture of valuing professional educators and the many and varied skills and knowledge we bring to serving students. No teacher in their right mind goes into this profession for the money, but financial security and income growth potential do a lot to ensure a continuous pool of quality applicants for the noble work of educating the future. The CEA will continue its partnership with CDA School District toward accomplishing these goals in service to our students. I'd like to thank you all for your service and for the profound educational experience I have had as CEA president over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colas, and congratulations, I think. Okay, so we are at the point in time for public comment. I'd just like to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during the public comment period are limited to one comment, not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to present to the board, you may provide those comments in writing through the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. Ms. Town will ensure that the board members receive the additional commentary. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comment. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. And tonight we only have one person, Mr. Steve Casey. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman Morrisoro, members of the board. I want to thank you for all your hard work. I know you've missed me over the summer, so I just had to show up tonight. But congratulations to those of you that have been reelected. It's an honor to be there, and it's hard work, and you know that, and you still did it. So good for you. I would like to, in my capacity as chairman of the Long Range Planning Committee, just welcome our new superintendent, Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson and I met some time ago, and I think we have something in common, and that is we both lost to Tom Loon in the state superintendent's election several years ago. I did in 2006, and he did in 2010. But I've known Mr. Olson. He's a very quality person. We're excited to have you here. We have some great projects going, as you well know. We have a great board. We have a great community. We're just happy to have you here, and we'll do anything we can to make your stay a good one and harmonious. And we look forward to that leadership with you and your team that you select. And that's all I have to say, which is amazing for me. So thank you very much.
That was amazing, and I kind of regret I didn't get to cut you off, Mr. Casey. Usually I have to. He was my principal, so I like to turn the tables on him a little bit. Okay, Dr. Olson, you're up with your superintendent's report.
Well, having known Steve as long as I have, that was amazing, and thank you again very much. It's good to see you in that audience, and it's good to see you involved with the school district. Just a few short comments and words of thanks to our board, members of our community, our staff, my colleagues. Up to about 3 weeks ago, I was a superintendent who was retired for 7 years, doing a little work with a software company and kind of moving through life. And a few weeks after that, the 7 years came to an end and a new page turned. I have to tell you, I'm just delighted to be here. As all of you know full well who live here, this is a wonderful community. It's probably most known as being wonderful for folks who are not from here, who did not grow up in these surroundings, this environment, this opportunity-laden community and school district. This is also an exceptional school district. I was able to serve in the state of Idaho in the Boise School District, and we shared ideas, information, practices back and forth with colleagues throughout my tenure there before that, and it continues to be the same, that Coeur d'Alene is looked at as a leader in the state and one that is to be emulated for the good work that they do. My role here is evolving as we speak. Over the next several weeks, we are going to be doing some interface and some planning to try to narrow an agenda. I will be here, and my wife reminded me to say this tonight. I will be here for 1 year, and what we want to do is make sure that that year is productive. It meets the priorities of the board, staff, and community, and that we walk out of here with the table set for the ongoing superintendency to follow, as well as the partnership with the students, the staff, and the community. So again, thank you so very much. I have a few other items I'd like to just bring to the attention of the board. Number one is we've already started work. I'm in I think my 9th day, and one of the things we're taking a look at is a brochure that will have both a print and an electronic version of how board meetings operate, a little bit more about our board trustees and how to connect. As you open that, you'll notice there is a big draft stamp across that. We'd ask board members and our clerk of the board to take a look at that, mark it up, make any suggestions, comments, and so on and so forth, and direct it back to us. Hopefully, let's say in the next 2 weeks. Would that allow plenty of time to do that? And you can certainly email comments from a distance if you want to bring that on holiday with you, which I'm sure you do with other board activities and other board responsibilities. And just shoot us your comments, and we'll move to a next draft, and then make that available to the public. Again, to the staff and public, I should say, to clarify how board meetings operate, your roles and responsibilities, and how you can best serve this particular community in this very important task that you've chosen. So that's item one. Item two is, you'll notice on the agenda the reference to Data Summit. And I'll just talk for a moment. Last week in a session with staff and board members, we were shaping the board agenda for this week, and one of the reports that was listed was a report on ISAT, a very, very important performance measure for our district. One of the things that was true for every board I've ever served was the hope to be able to have a meaningful discussion about this, yet also not burn into the wee hours of the morning and neglect possibly other elements of the agenda. What we talked about was the prospect of, because there are several people new to position, new to roles, as well as a number of veterans, is taking this concept a little further in terms of what we would call Data Summit. Many districts do this at the beginning of their school year, where there is a general profile of all of the major performance indicators of the district, along with the demographic changes, enrollment changes, and so on and so forth, that the board dedicates either a half day or sometimes, I guess I'll crazily say this, a full day to receipt of information, discussion, kind of deep dives into where we are at this particular point in time with our key indicators. From that particular point, we do quarterly updates, generally done in workshop sessions with the public invited, along with representative staff and the press and so on and so forth, to give both new board members as well as those who have been on the board on a continuous basis a chance to do deep dives into where we were, where we are, and where we want to be going. So with your permission, I'm going to be shaping a proposal that I'll steer back to the board. We just approved some third Monday sessions for workshops and those types of things that may fit, or if the board chooses to go more substantially, in other words, to take a whole day, a morning session, a break, an afternoon session, we could certainly make that a special session. But again, I'll be shaping a concept along with my staff and colleagues to present to the board either via your weekly transmission from the superintendency or via the next board meeting. So we'll move that along. Our newest trustee, Lisa, has indicated an interest in doing divisional overviews. What they would be 45 to 60-minute overviews of facilities and operations, secondary ed, elementary ed, special education, budget and finance, and so on and so forth. We're going to be setting up a schedule, but we'd like to also welcome other board members to participate into those orientation sessions. Again, some of you have been long serving on the board. You know a lot of this material and information like the back of your hand. Others have gotten bits and pieces along the way. And what we'd like to do is set a schedule and invite our colleagues, board colleagues, and anyone else you feel appropriate to these to get a chance to have a deep interface with all of the fundamental operations of the school district. So we know the who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much of the process a little more substantially than we know today. So we'll make that available via our, again, transmission to the board and fly from that particular point. We've set up board interview meeting dates and times. I think all of us have situated those, and I'm looking forward to what we're attempting to do. I'm also going to be doing some interview sessions with the Coeur d'Alene Education Association, and with key elements in the community and school district operation, central office operation, building-based administrators, and so on and so forth, to try to get a little profile on perceived priorities that the superintendency should take on for the coming year, bring that back to the board to help us shape our agenda for the months that will come. As we all know, school years evaporate. This is going to be a fast one for all of us. But with that in mind, we want to make sure that we have a clear agenda and a clear work plan for the superintendency. One other quick thing, I did a Safe Schools training. All of the employees of the district do a multifaceted Safe Schools training, and I wanted to compliment the Human Resources Office and the colleagues that were responsible for putting that program together, but also make it available to board members. Several of the topics included Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, copyright laws, and I actually have never had a session on copyright laws before. Sexual harassment in the workplace, bullying, both adult-based bullying as well as student bullying, so it might come into play with something that Trustee Eubanks has talked about. Homelessness and homeless kids, and there are others. They're very well done. They're bite-sized. You're not there for hours and hours and hours, unless you do them all at one time, which some people do. But very, very well done, very interesting. And again, I would recommend that board members who have an interest in some of those connect with Human Resources and say, hey, gee, I'd really like to take a look at those, because they're very, very helpful as understanding the big picture. There are several other items, but we'll put those in written form. Again, thank you very much. I'm very pleased and very proud to be here, and I pledge my best efforts for a very productive year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. Okay, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're into information items now. First up is Dr. Roscoe. We're kind of zipping along here.
First, I'd like to just welcome Dr. Olson, and I'd like to welcome Trustee May. It's a pleasure to see you both here with us, and thank you so much for your service to our district. We're delighted. About a year ago, our board members and our administrators met in this room during a workshop to discuss an initiative whose intent is to improve literacy for our young children, especially our K-3 kids. And in that meeting, or in one soon after, one of the things we talked about was to regularly have updates to the school board about literacy and all the work that we're doing. So this represents an update. And I'm looking at my partner in crime there, Anna Wilson, and so she doesn't know this, but as she sees that I've left anything out, I'm going to say, take it away, Anna, and she'll help us. We began that conversation, one of these clickers, I found the right one. We began that conversation by talking about the fact that if we are serious as a school district about college and career readiness, that it doesn't begin in high school, as everyone knows. It begins much sooner. It begins with our youngest children and their ability to read. And it's almost become trite when we talk about the fact that children at grade level 3, we sort of know whether they'll finish college or not, or even get to college, or even how many prison beds we need to build for based on their ability to read or not read at that young of an age. It's critical that our children be able to read. And so one of the things we talked about is that what we must do is create proficient and passionate readers and thinkers. And in order to do that, we gained a lot of support in our community from the Inland Northwest Community Foundation. And hopefully, for most of us, this is a review. I'm hoping that it will be helpful, Trustee May and Dr. Olson, that some of the work that we did was to reach out to the community who launched a pretty significant effort to create a grant called Opening Books, Opening Doors, all intended to support reading among our youngest children. So, and of course, we know the state also has done a great deal with the K-3 literacy initiative as well. But we know that to create proficient, passionate readers, we need partnerships with families. We need to know that when kids go home, they have books at home, and they have someone who will read to them, and they have someone who will support the work that they're doing at school and check their homework, and will send them to summer scholars when they need that extra boost during the summer. We also know, of course, that we need a partnership with our community, that our schools simply can't do it alone. So those are sort of lists of some of the programs that we've initiated. And our thanks, I mean, probably publicly, we can never say enough how grateful we are to the folks who are working for Summer Scholars, to our local libraries who have done so much to supply books, to our folks with Jingle Books, and Dave understands that well, as we all do, who have collected books for our children. The other part, the work that we really feel accountable for, is the work to support our teachers and our classrooms with professional development in classroom libraries and curricular support. We're asking you all and our children and families to hold us accountable to get better and better at creating passionate readers who are proficient. Therefore, what we know is that we've launched that work, and so the people who will be very directly involved this year will be K-3 teachers from each school. Every school is developing a leadership effort based on the work that we'll do together. So there will be 3 K-3 teachers from each school who have volunteered to be a part of a teacher leader academy to get really good at understanding reading even better. We also are including a teacher from the 4 or 5 grade levels. One thing became clear to us is that you can do a lot to divide a staff when we're not including everyone, even though the funding and the support is for K-3. We heard that you have heard from some of our grade 4 or 5 teachers, what about us? What about us when we're talking about going to Denver to learn, and what about us? We're working hard to include them in this effort. Principals, vice principals, and principal assistants will also be a part of that professional development. So we wanted you to know that it's not just let's just really edify some teachers and send them back. We know that instructional leadership is critical to this effort. Our school leadership teams as well will be a part of the work that we will do. So that's kind of the who. It's sort of everyone. I wrote down University of Idaho as part of our team because they'll be studying this effort. Much of their work will be to study what we're doing and to document our efforts, and to also help us get a much better understanding of the assessments that actually tell us whether our kids are proficient thinkers and readers. We all know that the IRI was in great need of an extreme makeover, and we've begun that process at the state level. And in the meantime, we're asking our partners at the University of Idaho to be with us in this effort and to help us use assessments that actually tell us whether our kids are understanding what it is they're reading. Actually, we start this month. We have 2 retreat days for these people who will be joining us. It's a large group of folks, so 40 or 50 people in the course of 2 different days, July 18th and July 31st. And this is my public invitation to you trustees to join us for even a portion of one of those days to watch our folks in action as they learn together. We'll have a PD session every month. It's an all-day session. They are designed to be extremely rigorous professional development sessions where our practitioners will be self-reflecting on their work in reading. We will have at least 3 teaching labs over the course of the year, but actually those teaching labs will be happening at schools all the time. We know part of this work is to deprivatize practice. We've got to get inside one another's classrooms and see how it is we're teaching and learn from one another. Ongoing learning and work in schools. The main focus, and we'll talk a little bit just in a second about, is of course reading, but that's not enough. Our people who are in the teacher leader academies will need to learn a great deal about leadership as well. It's one thing to get better at our craft, and it's another thing to be able to share that in ways that others are inspired to learn from, right? And we are working hard to scale up that effort so that we're seeing something beyond just pockets of excellence, and that's going to require a great deal of learning about leadership. Finally, Dr. Olson mentioned this, and it's about families, kids who are coming from hard places. And we know that we have to be able to learn more ourselves about resiliency in children and in adults, and we have to be able to respond to the emotional and academic needs of our children. Reading's not too important if you're feeling traumatized or hungry, right? So we're going to learn, we're learning lots about resiliency, and that's part of this process. Finally, just about reading, we've been talking for 2 years now about a balanced approach to literacy, and just a quick reminder that we're talking about fluency, and of course that's the only thing the IRI measured prior to this next year when we'll pilot a new IRI. But we know that fluency is not enough. If children can read quickly and don't understand what they're reading, or even more importantly, if what we've done is teach children to be fluent readers or to read quickly, and whatever we've done has caused them to not like reading, then we're in trouble, because we know what the research says about children who read lots. And we've talked about we need kids to read real books, real choice in a real community, right? We know, and it needs to be real reading, something, we've all been saying something beyond worksheets, right? So fluency, thinking and understanding. Our people who have been traveling to Denver have learned an awful lot about the 7 thinking strategies. To be sure, we want to say our work is not confined to our elementary schools. We are sending our secondary teachers, administrators, and coaches also to learn a great deal about understanding and thinking strategies. And finally, what are we doing to create a love for reading in our children? Better yet, what are we doing to make sure we don't squelch a love of reading in our children? Are we wearing a passion for reading on our sleeves as our educators? Are we doing that kind of work? Are we apprenticing them into the joy of reading and why adults read, why good, wise readers do what they do? Are we doing that work? So that's sort of the balanced literacy program that we'll be addressing throughout the course of this year. This kind of change, we call it adaptive change. It's deep. It takes a lot of work. It's more than just tweaking ourselves to excellence. This kind of change takes a tremendous amount of learning on our part, and we ask you to support us and to be patient with us as we do this work. Anna, anything that you think of that I've overlooked? No, I didn't. Thank you. 3-year process, at least. So what we know is that our data may or may not look great when we launch. And we've actually begun this work, as you all know. We began it last year, year before last. So we'll start to see whether or not our kids are becoming stronger thinkers. Some of our preliminary work in some of our lab classrooms is extremely promising, but we want to make sure that that happens for us across the district.
I have a question. You might have already covered this in a prior board meeting, but how is the grant structured? Is it a one-time grant, or you mentioned 3 years? Is it structured over 3 years? It is structured over 3 years, and so some of that fund comes to us, and it will help us with the professional development. It will help us with the assessment. It will help us with the books that we need, both professionally and for classroom libraries.
a great deal of that grant also goes to our community partners to help, help us create ways to make sure kids are getting books in their hands and taking them home, and that they're learning and getting ready for kindergarten before they ever reach our doors. So it is a 3-year process.
So, 2 questions. One is, when and where is the retreats?
Right here.
Here,
Right. In fact, if you just want to stick
18th
around
and-
right there till July 18th.
18th and 21st here, at what times?
Yeah, they're all day, Tom. So I think they start like something at 8:30, and I'll send you the exact details of those days. And we, I didn't mention this, but we have we have a top-notch literacy expert who does a lot of work in the Pacific Northwest, who will help us lead us through this work together. And we have some instructional coaches who've been trained up to offer us a lot of support. And as some of you know, we've begun to network with some of school districts west of us, and we've spent some time in lab classrooms in other school districts to learn more and to gain hopefully a good deal of useful knowledge. So right here, Tom, July 18th or July 31st, 2 different groups of teachers and administrators in those.
Okay, so we could, yeah, I can't commit it to a whole day, but I can see myself dropping in for a few hours or something like that.
That would be
just
wonderful.
to see what's going on.
Yeah.
The grant, I believe, was $600,000, right? $200,000 over each of the 3 years, right?
Yeah,
Is that right?
Correct. Anna, can you speak to how much of that grant we got? Can you want to say it?
Some of it,
have a microphone.
some of it goes to U of I. Isn't
Why,
U-
yes, you do.
Yes, our portion of the initiative is $76,000 per year for the first 2 years, and then slightly reduced the third year.
So the rest of it goes to what, U of I for their assessment?
University of Idaho for their research and assessment, and also Kate mentioned our community partners. So for example, United Way's Ready for Kindergarten program, and some of the other focus on kindergarten readiness targeting 4-year-olds in the community. That's one example.
Okay. So they're working on the assessment tools. At this point, they don't have those, I assume, right?
Well, they sort of do. It's called the Developmental Reading Assessment, the DRA, and Dr. Margaret Vaughn from the U of I is pretty convinced that it's a very, very thorough, a robust assessment. And so part of the work that we'd like to do is train some of our teachers who are interested in offering that assessment. It will also tell us how well our new IRI down the road, how accurate, how reliable it is as well.
I attended the public presentation of this at Bryan's schools, and I talked to a few people, and they're excited about it, but they also, as you know, they're expecting accountability of the money. So and of course, we're all very interested as to how it's going to be spent and how we're going to see our kids' reading improve. So anyway, I thank you for your effort on this, and I think it's a good effort both within the district and a good community effort.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because we also feel extremely thankful. We know there's a lot of people out in our community putting in a lot of hours volunteer to help us. And I want to thank, ahead of time, I want to thank these teachers. My impression is that when they finish this work that we're doing together, it'll feel a lot like getting their national board cert. I mean, it'll be videotaping ourselves in classrooms, learning from each other, keeping good data on our work. I think it's a really, really rigorous undertaking that we've invested in. Thank you.
Could I add something here? I just wanted to thank you and Anna for your passion and leadership in this process. Next to keeping our children safe, the most important thing we can do for them is to teach them how to read proficiently and enthusiastically. And a word or two about the IRI. Teaching kids to make letter sounds as fast as they can, even though they have no idea what any of it means, is ludicrous. Thank goodness the test is changing. Thank you.
You know how we feel about that,
Yes,
Dave.
I know.
Thank you.
Kate, sorry, I have one more question for you. Almost, you're off. On the new IRI, we're going to be piloting that. I know Fernan, I think I saw on the list, is that the only school in the district that's piloting
No,
that?
we're, Fernan, Ramsey, and Meadows will all three be piloting the new IRI.
Do they have to do both?
Unfortunately, yes, they do. Yes,
Ooh.
they, yeah.
Okay.
And they asked to do it. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Katie,
Go for it. All right.
do you have a finance report for us?
Yeah, Chairman Morrisroe, members of the board, Superintendent Olson, I'm pleased to present our May finance report this evening. On the first slide here, we've got our normal report, shows our revenues and expenditures. It's just a different view of our finances. Things are looking good with the revenues. Everything's, showing as it should this time of year. In a few days, we'll receive our final July 15th payment from the state, which will kind of settle up what we're going to receive for the year as far as our entitlement funding. And we've already received what we're going to get for salary-based apportionment. So we just always hope that it comes in up or where we thought it was going to be and not dip down. So hopefully attendance held through the end of the school year. We're a bit down in revenue compared to last year, which we'd expect, given that variance with the salary-based apportionment revenue versus the budget. And our expenditures to date are in good shape. The percentage is pretty comparable to prior year. So on our next slide, we just have our different view of the budget. This is by the iFarms coding. It shows at the bottom that we're 90% at the end of May. That's really close, but it's in great shape. It shows that we're probably going to end right where we thought we were as far as expenditures are concerned, maybe a little bit below, so which is what we needed with the revenues being much lower than expected. So. And the next slide is just the visual representation of the numbers from the prior slide. And we have our enrollment report on the last page. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Or
Was there another question?
board members, any questions?
Just one quick.
Go ahead, Dr. Olson.
I'm assuming unanticipated, I'm assuming unanticipated revenues lower than expected because of enrollment, or what was the basis for?
Yeah, so
revenue decline?
our enrollment was up just a few kids from prior year, but our attendance was actually lower than prior year. But we were budgeting for an increase of enrollment and an increase of attendance by a few more units, so we're kind of taking that hit.
Okay. How will that be reflected in the coming year's budget?
Well, we're hoping that expenditures, we'd have some savings in expenditures at the end of the year. I think we're looking at the fund balance and where things are landing this time of year, that we're going to have some significant savings in expenditures to kind of make up for that loss. So we're hoping that our fund balance will be steady. Our goal was to have a budget in the black, ending the year without dipping into fund balance, and I believe that still will happen. So we're not adjusting our budget in any way based on the decrease in the salary-based apportionment revenue.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. Is there any way that we can track why our attendance was down? Was it through truancy or illness?
I think there was some speculation on the attendance. Weather was a big concern. We had quite a few days where, conditions weren't great, but we still had school, and, parents had make the choice to stay home, that sort of thing. So
I think some of the illness was just bigger this year too. Yeah, you had was it a mumps outbreak in Spokane, right? I think there was some, fear amongst that, and we'll see. Okay, thank you, Katie. right, Dr. Cottle, you have some policy. This is for information. I believe it starts on page 163 of the packet.
Yes, we have 3 policies for information. 2 of them, 4135, website accessibility, and 5400, leaves of absence, are both spring updates from ISBA. And again, ISBA, it's suggested language, and so the board can look at it and decide if it's language that they would like or not. The first one, 4135, talks about website accessibility and non-discrimination. This is something that we currently do not have in our policy, but we're required to have this according to Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And so we would need to make some changes to our website. And so I'm not sure if you want to take them one at a time to talk about them, or...
Yeah, let's go one at a time. Is there any questions on or discussion regarding 4135, which is the website accessibility? Okay. How about 5400?
5400, and there's an accompanying procedure. Actually, ISBA had 5400, the procedure and the policy together as one policy, and we separated it out. But the reason for this one is this policy was updated based upon another school district requesting to provide some guidance when placing employees on involuntary leave. The policy is not required, but is recommended if the board is going to delegate the authority to grant leave or to put an employee on involuntary leave. So if you were going to delegate the authority to the superintendent, this would be suggested language if you choose to do so.
Any questions or comments on this one? So I have some, or at least a question, I guess. And Dr. Olson, we haven't had a chance to talk about this, but the couple things that stood out to me. One was just that basically the granting of leave, whether it be involuntary or not, was being delegated to the superintendent. And in some instances, such in here, it says when it has to do with classified personnel, no notification to the board is needed. And, you know, currently on our consent agenda, if someone requests, let's say, an extended leave of absence, they want to take a year off, you know, that's something that's coming to the board. Under this policy, at least the way I'm reading it, that wouldn't be the case any longer. That wouldn't be board approved, that would be superintendent approved.
And you're correct, this would be a big
There were other
change.
things for involuntaries. There's some notification requirement, but it's 21 days down the road or within 21 days. So I just questioned this policy. I looked at the ISBA rationale, and I forwarded that to you guys before. But to me, what it looked like they were saying was, if we're going to delegate the authority to grant involuntary leave, that this was the policy we should have. And we don't currently do that. So I question the need for the policy unless the board wants to make that change and we want to delegate that authority. So that was my concern. You know, like I said to Trina, there's only so many sandboxes we can play in, and this is one of them. And I hate to close off sandboxes.
And I would agree, this deviates from our current practice. It was just one of their suggested policies, and so we bring them to you so you can decide if it's a direction you want to head or not.
I don't have a big problem with this, maybe giving some more of this authority to the superintendent, but I definitely have a problem with us not being in the loop on that, not being notified, not being aware of it as, you know, as is happening or close to when it's happening, not 21 days later, whatever it is. I think that's important enough. If we're putting somebody in voluntary leave, we should have a heads up on that one. Now, whether or not we want to give the superintendent that authority, I guess that's something for board discussion.
What is the overarching need to do this? This almost seems like change for the sake of change. I say leave it alone.
I say leave it alone too.
Dr. Olson, would you be willing to comment on, prior history with this sort of policy?
My experience with leaves of absence is that they have always come to the board, generally in the consent calendar under personnel for review, just to establish history, trends, rationale for leaves of absence, and so on and so forth. So it's, I have no discomfort whatsoever bringing it to the board for action. The only thing is timeliness. My curiosity is, have we had issues before with employees wishing to take a leave and having that ultimately approved by the board with timeliness?
No, I would say timeliness hasn't been a problem. Our process has actually been pretty good, as is. So my hearing, we're not interested in entertaining this.
Well, David's saying if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Okay. So we will not bring it back for further information.
Okay, thank you.
So it's-
We could end up worse off.
Okay, and the last one on there, 5745, professional personnel probation. As we have worked through some issues this past year, the attorneys for the district has recommended that we make this change. If you notice, the change is adding item A, which is unsatisfactory completion of a professional assistance plan. The reason for that is when we have a certified person who is struggling, regardless if it's a teacher or an administrator, we put them on professional assistance and then on probation. And so this was just to make sure that the language matches our evaluation policy and procedure for certified staff.
Okay, any questions on 5745?
I'm supportive of that, particularly with the recommendation of our attorney. And I understand the reason. I know we have put people on professional assistance plans, and I'm glad that we are including that into our policy as a. So I would be supportive of the changes.
Works for me.
Okay, well, these items are for information. We'll see 4135 and 5745 back next month for action. And they'll be out for comment for staff and community members for the next 30 days. Okay,
Real quick, on page 165, I was just reading it where it says complaints should, including the information below. I think that just needs to say include. That was just one little thing. Did you get it?
Okay, thank you. So we're on to action items. We're staying with Dr. Cottle here, and this is item D tonight. This is the ratification of the 27-18 negotiated agreement.
Yes, and I would echo Derek's comments earlier. I'm very pleased in our process this year. It's amazing that we finished the time that we finished and we're not carrying over into August, and that we can start the school year on a positive note. In your packet, you will see the master articles and the memorandum of understanding. What the agreement includes is a 2% increase. And it also covers the increase in insurance. We have also added some longevity stipends for teachers with a Bachelor's of Arts, 70 credits at 20 years of experience and at 25 years of experience. You will also see, and I would say this is probably what we're most pleased about, is in the memorandum of understanding, is that we're working on how to improve and provide more planning time for elementary teachers, which is very complicated, but it's very worthy, and we're happy and excited to be able to work to do that next year. So I would entertain any questions that you may have on the master articles and the changes.
I had a quick question about how you're going to incorporate the planning time for elementary teachers. Will it be done by the principals? Will they adapt their schedules to ensure that they're getting at least 30-minute blocks for?
Yes, what will happen is Dr. Orozco will work with elementary principals, because each school is different and unique, and figure out what's the best way to do that. We're looking at trying to do it with part-time classified positions based on the needs of the school to try to reduce that amount, but we know as we get into it, it may be a little more complicated. And as part of the MOU, we'll gather a group together to talk about how it's going and make some suggestions for next year.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we have motion language here that would be a motion to move to ratify the 2017-18 negotiated agreement.
So moved, or do I need to read it?
I think you can so move it. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. I'd just like to say it was, we made up a lot of ground on the last day, and I think both sides really worked well together, and I appreciated the way things went. I think, Dr. Olson, just for your knowledge, we did, throughout the process, expressed an interest in at least exploring a different way of doing things and looking at interest-based bargaining, and I know you have lots of experience in that, and we've talked about that in the past, so I think that's great, and I think as we move forward, I believe the board was pretty strong that we'd like to try to do things a little different. So,
I'd just like to thank the Casey and the administrative team for their negotiation efforts. I know it's long hours. I've been on negotiations twice, and I don't like it. That's why I don't like being on the, I don't do well with numbers, and I don't do well with that kind of conflict. So I appreciate your willingness to spend all those hours doing that. And I also do second what Casey said in terms of we need to come up with another way of doing this. Every year is contentious. I just think we can do it. I know CA's been talking about that for some time, and I know other districts maybe have a smoother approach to this. I know, Dr. Olson, with your experience at the Boise School District, I imagine you have a lot of experience on negotiations, so I'm really looking forward to us coming up with another plan to do this different next year. It just is painful for everybody involved, and I don't think it has to be. I mean, there's going to be naturally some disagreements about how the money is spent, and that's just normal, but I think there's better ways we can do this. So anyway, I would thank the team that did it this year, and I hope we can do something different next year.
okay. Thank you. Dr. Nelson. We've got a large packet of information in there with the science course pacing guides.
There we go. Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board, over the course of this last year, we had teams of teachers looking at science. They have had new materials over the course of the year, everything from lab-based investigative materials through FOSS in grades K through 5, through new probeware and online resources in grades 6 through 8, up into brand new physical texts at the high school, even into our AP programs. We've been working with those through the scopes and sequence provided by the vendors over the last year. And over those times, we have brought in lead teachers to be able to look at what science looks like in our buildings. In the immense copies that you have in your packet, and making your packet about double the size that it probably should have been, you can see the qualities of their work, and it is very detailed, and it provides a roadmap so that anybody coming into our district can do two things. Number one, they get a feel for what science looks like in our district and the rigor and the relevance and the expectation that we have for how that science is taught within our district. And they also get the understanding of where those expectations lead, grade level to grade level to grade level, all the way through a student's eventual graduation within our district. Tonight we present those to you. They've been on public display for the last 30 days, and we've received no public comment.
Okay, is there any questions? I know Trustee Hearn had some questions last time, Dr. Nelson, about notification and kind of advance warning, opt-in, opt-out, that sort of thing. Trustee Hearn, are you?
Well, it was just in relation to issues of, controversial issues within the science curriculum. If there were some, then we need to have publicly identify those and give people an opportunity to decide what they want if they want their child involved in that or not. So to me, science isn't that controversial, but for some people it is.
Absolutely. And I think that as you've read the documents, hopefully that you can see that we've really tried to show very balanced viewpoints of controversial topics. In addition, we do have policy that does discuss the discussion of controversial topics within our district and how it's so important to make sure that the communication is there with our stakeholders and that our instructors use that exact same balanced approach with their students, who eventually talk at their dinner table, who eventually talk to other people in the community.
So are we going to wait for people to react on some of these issues, or do we have a proactive way of dealing with this?
Well, again, I think through the syllabus, through the conversation that goes on in the classroom environments, we don't have necessarily a document that says next week we're going to be talking about this that's clearly defined district-wide. Right now, with your wishes, we can certainly go through and deal with that. Usually those are covered within the syllabus itself. But if you're thinking more at the elementary level, we don't always have syllabi that go home, which talks about that. We don't have anything that currently is in process for that, but again, with your wishes, I would be more than glad to present something to you at a later date.
Dr. Nelson, these are tentatively, I guess, being approved on July 10th. So just, can you explain kind of the rollout and how it goes to staff and, implementation and that sort of thing? Is that a PD session, or how are we doing that? Grade level,
Sure.
secondary, primary, that sort of thing?
Well, the first thing that you need to know is the staff has not been obscured by these. They have received advanced copies of these already, and many of them have already written a great majority of it. Our cross-district collaboration and our departmental collaborations over the course of second semester this last year, we're really starting to look at these documents. However, they will be provided in hard copy as well as our science philosophy pamphlets as of our district kickoff on August 28th. They'll be referenced several times over the course of the year, and again, this is where our ongoing conversation of formative assessment comes in, whereby we're doing those regular check-ins with our teachers to making sure that they're on pace, as well as our students are performing in terms of that investigation that we are looking to see. We still have a statewide assessment also in grades 5 and grades 7 and in high school. So those will be a litmus test as well. Those will be those will have to be rewritten at the statewide level because the standards are changing as well.
I have a quick question. So when you see, human impacts on Earth systems, how deep are they going? I know some are for second grade, so obviously, it's geared toward the age level, but will, the parents be seeing that the children are studying human impacts on Earth systems, and what are they learning at that? Can we see do we have a better idea?
Absolutely. Of course, this scope and sequence dovetails into our curricular materials. Our curricular materials go through everything into the specifics of the investigation, talk about this, get to this level. Absolutely. All of our materials are available online. So you'd be able to log in to FOSS to be able to see specifics into that investigation if you so choose. And if you would like, I'd be more than glad to provide you materials as well.
It looks fantastic. It's exciting for the students.
We've already seen a lot of good growth this last year in science, a lot of enjoyment, first of all, about science. We're excited to be able to have that fluency now together where people are having similar conversations, and then the conversations that are going on behind the scenes in those Monday morning collaborations and other events really are taking those things that are going on in individual classrooms and improving. Keep in mind also that what we are showing with you today is presented to you for action, but that does not mean that they won't ever be changed. We do not sit curricula on a shelf for years and years and years. We adapt them and change them little by little based on the best practices that we're seeing in our classrooms.
Let's say a high school science teacher is going to teach about the origins of man. Creationism, theory of evolution, teach them both as theories, just so our kids are educated to both theories and move on?
Again, you do have some content limits as to what is discussed statewide. Conversation in the classroom will always move along that. Our skilled teachers are good at taking those theories and again trying to personalize them based on what is going on in the dinner table at the classroom. Talking about, yes, both sides of opinion, but then asking our students to go home, talk it over with mom and dad, and really refine your own vision of what it looks like.
Well, the other controversial issue that we brought up at the last board meeting was this issue of climate change, discussion of climate change, and I think it's important that we be balanced in how we approach that, and that we just look at all sides of it. I know where I stand on this, but I just want to make sure that we're up front with our students, with their parents, with the community, that these issues are going to be discussed.
Sure.
And if parents have a concern about them, that there's an avenue to discuss their concerns. And
Absolutely, and board policy already provides for that. Keep in mind, climate change was in our old standards as well. It
Yeah.
has certainly come to more of a focused attention in our science classes just because it's the conversation that's going on in our world. I think that our teachers are very skilled in listening and communicating very well with that. However, again, if it comes to the point where we feel as a body that it needs to be addressed and we need to do some more target marketing or communication outward to parents and guardians as to what is being discussed and how it's being discussed in the classroom and how it may impact that conversation at the dinner table, I'm absolutely for it.
okay, I mean, I don't have a problem with the curriculum guide, the stuff that I read here. I thought it was fine. I just know that our community can be sometimes hyper-political.
Sure.
It can get real sensitive on certain issues, and I just want to be on the front.
Right.
This is the first I've ever heard of this.
What do you mean
Oh,
climate
sorry.
change? No, so I just want us to be up front and ahead of this instead of reacting later. That's just what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, and I would hope that the conversations we've had in providing these documents out to the public and giving people great opportunities to be able to communicate already to us in advance of your decision this evening shows our community that we do want this to be a conversation, that we are not autocratic, that we do not just give the information out and expect it to have a truth to everyone, but that we do want this conversation back and forth. And there are, you're right, very differing opinions on every subject around, and I get to hear a lot of different feedback.
And you haven't had any parent feedback yet?
At this point, no.
No.
Not of the guides that are presented to you tonight.
I wonder if it might be appropriate or maybe just a good reminder to kind of pass along what the policy is, what the procedure is, to the science staff, just so they're aware, because it's probably not something they've always had to deal with, other than maybe health science and those sorts of things. They're very familiar with notifying folks and making sure mom and dad know what we're talking about, but it might just be a nice refresher.
Sure, as we kick off our professional development on the 28th of August, I will certainly make sure that that is a piece of it in our discussion of philosophy as well.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we need a motion to approve the K-12 science course pacing guides as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
I second it.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, Ms. Town.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Hearn, you have some items for us tonight. Item F, it's some ISBA resolutions you've been working on. I believe it starts on page 352 of the board packet.
Right, I appreciate it. I do have some comments about this, and I'll be willing to answer any questions people have. Just for a refresher for people that don't know, the Idaho School Board Association, how it does a lot of things, such as policies we were discussed earlier. They do a lot of different things, but one of the main things that they're known for is their legislative efforts, and how legislation comes to pass with the School Board Association is through resolutions that are first submitted by school districts. They are then discussed at the executive board meeting, which is this year, September 9th. 8th and 9th in Boise. The executive board will review the resolutions that have been submitted by the school districts and will either give a pass, oppose, or neutral position on those. The resolutions are then discussed at the state convention, or actually there's first to discuss at the regional meetings. When we meet with our legislators, if trustees who attended those in the past, I know that Tambra has, and I think Casey did too, those regional meetings we have to discuss the legislation, which are discuss resolutions which are pending. In this case, I believe it's on September 28th. I think that's right, Lynn. And then they're debated and voted on at the ISBA annual convention. This year it's going to be in Coeur d'Alene, November 8th, 9th, and 10th. If it's passed by the convention, then the ISBA staff basically seeks legislative sponsors, legislators who will carry the agenda of the School Board Association. Oftentimes they're in cooperation with the superintendents or with IEA. So it depends what the resolution is. So I just wanted to give a little background as to what these are about. Now, basically, what I did is on these resolutions that are on your packet, I wrote them both. I did send them to ISBA. They looked at them, and and they were supportive, at least. They were not taking a position, but they thought they were okay as written, so they didn't change. Let's put it that way. They didn't change any of the wording. The first one on page 352 deals with school board elections. Now, I think that ISBA would rather not have to deal with this issue, but it's a political reality. The political reality is that the legislature for the last 3 or 4 years, mostly through the efforts of Senator Sousa and I believe Senator Rice, have wanted to change the law with regards to school board trustee elections. And the ISBA has opposed their efforts in the past, and we've been successful, but each year it gets a little hairier in terms of our ability to stop the changes that they're suggesting. So we decided finally, after discussing this at the executive board, that we should come up with our own resolution, our own solution to this problem, and instead of being reactive to what some of the senators are doing. So this first one on school trustees elections, I don't know if you've read it over or not, but it basically. What we're saying, or what I'm saying, and it was been, like I said, Karen Echeverria, the executive director of ISBA, thought it was fine. So did Jess, who was Jess Harrison, who's our legislative person. Anyway, so again, we need to get in front of this issue, and it basically is saying that we are recommending that school board trustee elections occur in odd number years, and that we would oppose it being even numbered years. The reason for that is because of putting the elections into a partisan election time. So if they are in the odd number years, they are the same in November. They are same as city council elections and some other nonpartisan elections. I believe some college trustee elections. Then the So our belief is that if the intent of the legislators is truly to increase participation, but not just make it a partisan issue, and the reason I'm saying that is because I question the intent of. I think sometimes people do want it in a partisan election, but if their intent is truly to just increase participation, then we feel that a compromise was to put it in November of the odd number years. So then the second issue became. When should people take office if they are elected in November? And the executive board seemed to think it would be better that there's a superintendent evaluation that usually takes place, I believe, in December or January, and that it should be after that but before budget time. So that's why we kind of left it a little bit broad here. It says, whereas elected school board trustees should take office after required superintendent evaluation and before the beginning of teacher contract negotiations and the required school budget meeting. So that could all be negotiated. Maybe they take office in February or March or April or whatever, We don't know. That's something that would be negotiated, but the idea was that they would be after the superintendent evaluation, because somebody newly elected in November would not know anything about the superintendent. So I could say a lot more about this. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. I believe that, again, you know, this has been up in front of the legislature 3 times, the last 3 sessions. Senator Souza's made it very clear. She stated publicly she's going to bring it up again this next winter. So we felt we need to get in front of this issue. Now, as I said before, ISBA is not terribly excited about it. We just, you know, but it's something that we feel like we need to do. It's a political reality. It's going to happen. We better try to make it happen as best we can in the direction we think we can live with. So that's the first resolution. I answer questions if anybody has that. If
Why
not,
don't we just
I'm going to want
tackle them
a...
one at a time?
Huh?
Let's tackle them one at a time.
One at a time. As I was going to say, I'm going to need I'd like to see a motion, or else I can make the motion.
I've got a question, just clarification, I guess, on this one. It was what you were just talking about there, about the timing after the superintendent evaluation, before contract negotiations. I know it's a practice of a lot of districts, including this district, historically, that those superintendent evals have been done in December or January. I, for one, in my time on the board, I don't agree with that. I know it's how we do it, but I don't care for that. I guess it would be a better way to state it. Just because we're barely into a year, into the school year, and I think it's a hard time to do an evaluation, at least on the current year. You know, how can you evaluate how things are going when you're just a few months into it? I think, and I don't know what the practice is among other districts. I think legally it's by June 30th or June 1st. I can't recall which one it is. I know we talked about it this year, but you know, the legal requirement I think is June 1st or June 30th. It's one of those, which would be well into, or could be well into, budgets and teacher contracts. And so that's one question I have. You know,
That was purposely left broad.
Ambiguous, right?
Ambiguous, because that would be a negotiation issue. That would be something, if the resolution, you know, makes it into legislation, we would negotiate as to when that would be. And I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. You know, if you're elected in November, should you wait till April to take office? I don't think that's kind of a long time.
Right.
You know, I think maybe February or March or somewhere in there, January even. I don't know. We'd have to figure that one out. But that was something that clearly that the executive board felt, or I can't speak for all of them. Some of them felt that we needed, that's the timing. It needed to be after superintendent evaluations, before negotiations with the teachers. So that's why it's left ambiguous.
The other, I guess, question or concern that I have with this, I think if it were up to me, I don't support any change, because I don't think the system's broke at this point. So that's my concern, is pushing a change. I would be much more comfortable if this said, we don't support any change, but if you're going to change the system, this is what we'd support. You know, or I'd feel better, you know, the School Board Association is comfortable with this. Because, I think it is politically motivated to some degree, the changes that are being recommended by certain legislators. And, you know, I think if, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyways, if people were concerned about participation in elections, then they wouldn't be pushing closed primaries and deciding races in May when hardly anyone votes. But that's basically in Idaho, where we have a one-party Republican system. That's basically the way it works. And so I don't think their vocalized intent matches with their practice. And so, you know, to me, the system's not broke. I understand I do, I don't love the idea of it being on a partisan election in November, but I'd just as soon see it stay the way it is.
Well,
and I understand the conflict there.
And I understand, as I said before, I don't think that the School Board Associations is jumping up and down enthusiastic about this. but there is, it's a political reality that this is not going away in the legislature. And this legislation last year made it out of Senate committee and onto the Senate floor and was fought for it became a contentious issue. And we were kind of given the heads up that, you better get ahead of this issue because it's coming back next year. Senator Souza's already made a point that she's going to bring it back next year. So we just felt like, okay, if this is going to happen, if it's going to pass, let's at least have some say as to what it's going to look like. Hopefully we can come up with something we agree with. You're right. I mean, her argument, or the argument is that, the percentage of people that show up for school board elections is very small, and it is true. It is very small. You can argue, well, why aren't people paying more attention? Why aren't they showing up for these elections? I don't have the answer to that. Their argument is, well, only special interests get their candidates in there, and if when you have it, it's just so the thought was, okay, I think there may be another agenda here. I'm not going to, that they really want it to be in a partisan election time, so that they pretty well guarantee who the person is going to be. But assuming best intentions, that the intention is really just increase participation, then November of odd number years makes the best sense in terms of, because at least like this November, we're going to have a city council election. I think maybe a college trustee or two are going to be elected this year. I mean, that's what the idea is. At least let's put it into a nonpartisan November election instead of a May election with minimal participation. So I guess I hear what you're saying. I'm not convinced that the system's broken either, but I am convinced that that this is going to pass. Something's going to pass, and we felt like we should at least be in front of it, like I've already said. So I don't know. I mean, that's where I'm coming from.
I don't know that we'd be in front of this doing that. I think we'd just be dragged along. I agree with what Casey said there, and I know you agree too, Tom. This to me is a partisan effort, however you look at it. This is not what's best for school boards. It's not what's best for school districts. The school year starts July 1st. We need everybody on board July 1st who's going to be on the board to get ready for the school year in terms of creating new policies and to make sure the budget is, set and ready to go and to work within that budget. When you elect somebody in November, you're going to swear them in the middle of the school year? That's stupid. Sorry. And I know you agree with me.
I've given my argument. I mean, I think I'm not.
Tom, would you be open to rewriting this resolution so the opening statement is that we don't agree with moving the election because it's currently working, and making it the argument why it should not be moved? I mean, would that be more powerful? Because I think Dave's right that if we agree to this resolution, we may end up getting dragged along, and it might make the position a little bit weaker.
I don't know. I'm not. I mean, we can certainly work on the wording. We do have to have this into ISBA by the end of this month, so we really needed to take some action. I'm not sure we're going to be dragged along. I mean, the ISBA is willing to. They're willing to push this as a compromise piece of legislation. They're willing to go fight this out in the legislature as a compromise piece. Instead of their position in the last couple of years has been no, no, no. Don't change it, don't change it. Now, I've found from, and I was told by Karen Echeverria that not all the school districts are in favor of keeping it the way it is. That some of the larger school districts have come forward and said, yeah, we do think a change is not a bad idea. So it'll be interesting to see if this makes it to the floor of the convention. If it gets that far as to what kind of debate we have. Could be a very contentious debate. And maybe maybe ISBA would end up saying, we're going to use all our resources with the help of our friends in the legislature and other stakeholders to oppose any change. But what we're hearing right now is there's going to be a change, so let's find some compromise. That's what I'm so.
I do think historically, though, our state legislature is always wanting to give school boards local control. And so if we make the argument that this should be a local control issue, we should be able to determine, our clerk should be able to determine when we run elections for our school boards. And I think we should stick with that position. I think it's working. I think we've made the argument why it's working. And I'm just worried that, I agree with everything that you've said in this resolution. I'm not sure, unless there's a bold statement in the beginning that says we do not support moving school board elections to November, I'm not sure I can support it.
Maybe the legislature could put some effort into improving calendar literacy for the voters in the state, so that everybody can realize that in May we're voting for school board trustees. Circle your calendar. That would be easier. Sorry.
Okay,
I'm being really rude, aren't
part of the reason I brought this up in this, it was brought up in the Coeur d'Alene district, is this happens to be the home district of Senator Souza. We felt that that would be advantageous for it to be by our district. I have reached out to Senator Souza, so is ISBA, asked to work with her on this, and she's not so far been willing to meet with us. So she's going to run her own piece of legislation again, probably very similar to what it was last year, which basically was to move it to an even-numbered year and put it into the partisan election. And I don't know. I don't know what I think we should, of course I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think we should do this. Yeah, I don't think there should be, would I like to see this change? No, but on the other hand, it's going to happen. And I'll guarantee you, next spring we'll be saying, why'd they do that? Because I can pretty much guarantee you they're going to do something to change school board elections. It seems to be a hot issue. Senator Souza's leading the charge on this, but she's not the only one. Right. There was a number of other senators that spoke in favor of this legislation, but it was enough to stop it. It was finally killed, but it was close. What I heard from the people in Boise. I mean, the ban eventually ended up being withdrawn because it was going to fail, but it made it farther than it ever had before. It never had before made it out of committee. This year it made it onto the Senate floor.
In the Senate, though.
In the Senate. Well, if it goes through the Senate, it's going to go through the House. That's political reality. If it makes it through the Senate, it's going to make it through the House. The House is a more conservative body, and it will do that. So the battle's in the Senate. Anyway,
I'd be curious, just Dr. Olson, with your experience of being in a few different states, have you been in a state where they did a mid-year trustee shift?
No, they were always locally established. A lot of states have differentiated systems based on the sizes of districts. The equivalent of that in Idaho would be Boise, which is a charter district, a district formed before statehood that has its trustee elections the Tuesday after Labor Day. And again, depending on the year, sometimes there are 7 candidates running for 1 or 2 seats, and sometimes there's 1 candidate, and sometimes the turnout is substantial, and sometimes the turnout is miserable. There's an old adage in poker, it's not the cards you get, but when you get them. In the trustee elections, it's the same type of situation. It's based on events that have preceded the election. It's based on issues. It's based on the ebb and flow of different factors affecting districts. I hear what you're saying, Trustee Hernan, and I believe that you always need something in your back pocket when you go to the legislature. But I also have seen in my 15 years in this state the strength of elected officials talking to elected officials. The elected officials at the school board level going to the legislature and saying, hey, wait a minute, this is our domain. This is the environment within which we work, and we need the flexibility to, A, as much as possible, depoliticize the setting, and B, to be effective responding to local conditions and local input. So, again, what I've also learned is you want to have something in your back pocket so that if there's an inevitability, you want to pull out the best situation possible of a bad situation. And I think that's what you're
Well,
proposing.
this is a back pocket kind of
Yep.
piece of legislation. If it goes to, it would authorize ISBA to negotiate at this level, right? I mean, it's not, I guess maybe I didn't state that clearly. It would not be, I don't know if they would carry it as much as there would be a reactive position. This is our position if you're going to go this direction. It would authorize them to do that.
And again, in that context of not the cards you get, but when you get them, sometimes you better have that in your back pocket because something's going to happen. So I'm hearing what you're saying. Again, what I've seen over the last 15 years is when elected officials stand up and talk with elected officials, generally appropriateness prevails, but not always.
Well,
Right. I mean, I guess the concern I have without that statement of we don't think there's a need for change is, are they going to look at this and say, wow, even the ISBA board, or, the ISBA and the school boards across the state think we need to change these elections. So let's change them. And maybe they don't do, maybe that gives them the green light to feel comfortable about doing
Whatever.
right, the even year proposal. And
so would you add a wording what? Whereas what? I'm fine with that modification. Whereas
We're opposed to any change at this point.
whereas this
whereas we don't believe a change is needed. I mean, I don't know what the.
Whereas whereas what? We're not. I'm sure how we say this. We're not convinced we need a change. However, whereas what?
Is that some language you'd be willing to work on? And then, I don't know how we'd get back together this month, but we can get back together this month.
I'll work on it, sure. I don't, I'll come up with some, I hear what you're saying. So I will work on that wording. And I'm just saying that the deadlines have it in by the end of the month.
Right.
Otherwise, it won't be considered this legislative session, and they really want a resolution on this issue in end of July.
I got the impression, and I could be wrong, but as it's written now, I'm not sure you're going to get the votes to have a resolution for the end of July, but I could be wrong. I mean, we can certainly make a motion
That's
to
fine.
vote on.
I would let ISBA say some other district's going to have to carry this, or that's not going to happen. I'm just saying that I think it's the right thing to do politically, and maybe, as Dr. Olson says, as a fallback position.
Right.
But I don't want to see this. None of us want to see this end up in a partisan on the ballot with with legislators and governors and presidents and everybody else. Do we want a school board? We don't want that. So this is a compromise piece. Let's at least put it on odd numbered years. I'd hate to see that happen. But I can work on another whereas that maybe we can live with. Okay, I'll try to do that. Okay.
Okay, and then we need to get back together this month.
Yeah, I'll
Discuss
get that
at
to
some
you.
point.
I'll get it to Lynn this week
But I
sometime.
don't think we should wait till the last week of the month.
No, I'll get it to her this week, and then I'll give a couple different options maybe I can come up with.
And could you work on whereas when they would take office? That was a little bit confusing, I thought, and nebulous, and something more specific and concise.
Well, I don't know if I can I'll work on that one too, but I don't think that was wording that was wanted because for people to, as I said earlier, to negotiate on that time. I'd hate to say whereas they will take office February 1st, or maybe we could do that, but I'm not sure I want to come up with that. I was thinking that could be ISBA staff could work on that. I don't know.
None of this is the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to have the trustees in place before the kids show up in September at least. That's the right thing to do. And this isn't broken.
The right thing, it is, it may not, well,
I understand political reality, but the political reality is also that we should stand up for what we believe in.
and we have for the last 3 years. We've fought it tooth and nail in the legislature, and we've won. But we're being told by people in the Senate, you better get in front of this issue because it's going to pass next time around. Something's going to pass on school board elections because it keeps coming back up. There's enough of a base of people that want to change that something will happen. So anyway, okay, I will work on some whereases and submit this to Lynn and see where it goes. You know, the other piece of other resolution deals with seatbelts and school buses, and you can see what I also wrote this one basically. And the purpose of this resolution really is to start the conversation on a statewide basis. You know, we made the decision in our district, as we all know, that we were going to have, 3-point shoulder / seatbelts in new school buses. I didn't bring my school seatbelt file to argue this whole issue again. The idea was that this should be, to bring this in front of the ISBA convention and hopefully have the legislature take a look at this as a statewide issue. Do they want to change the law, or do they want to, what do they need to do, or do they want to do anything on it? But the whole idea of this resolution was to at least bring it to the floor and discuss this issue. And as we've talked about, we know that school buses, as it says in the resolution that I wrote, are generally safe in most situations. Whether by their slow rate of speed, the stuff that I put in here, but that there are situations where seatbelts would increase the safety of students. I did have a conversation with, I don't think it was not a confidential conversation, I can mention, I did have a conversation with a communication with the superintendent of the Blaine School District where they had that accident last spring, and it was a rollover accident, and she told me that she felt seatbelts would have been very helpful. Those kids, that bus rolled over, and she felt that would have helped prevent injuries. And that's the whole issue. The issue is that school buses are generally safe when they're putt-putting around town at 25, 30 miles an hour, dropping off kids. They're generally safe in most situations, but when they're on the highways, when they have a side impact crash, or when they have a rollover accident, then the consensus seems to be that seatbelts, 3-point harnesses would help protect lives. So that's why we went this direction in the Coeur d'Alene district. And so the point of this resolution was to at least kick it to the floor of the ISBA convention for the discussion and see what other districts have to say about this. So that's and hopefully encourage the state. Again, we're not asking. It says, therefore, be resolved, the legislature pass legislation to promote and encourage the use of 3-point shoulder seatbelts in school buses and provide the appropriate funding and state policies to facilitate their use. What I meant by funding was, we know those school buses are a little more expensive, right? They're another, what is it, Jill says, another $5,000 or $10,000 a bus to have those kind of, and then the policies. Mark Lyons was talking. He thought that some policies could probably be tweaked that would help on a statewide as far as liability issues. So again, it's the start of the conversation. I think I'd be happy if this made it to the floor and we had a debate. Even if it went down in flames, we would have the entire state discussing seatbelts in school buses. At least I think that's an important issue to bring up at this point. We know about the the accident that occurred in Tennessee last winter. That was not that was a bus that went into it was by a guy driving way too fast and hit a tree, and kids were killed. That was a side impact one, right? Probably the kid sitting right where the tree hit would have died anyway, but other kids flew across the bus and were injured in that way. That's what the point we're trying to make. So that's the purpose of that resolution. So I'm answering any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I had a quick question. So the resolution would not mandate, it would just promote and encourage.
Right. ISBA asked about the wording, we talked about the word mandate.
Okay.
Mandate is a kiss of death in Idaho, right? You say mandate anything of school districts and it's not going to go anywhere, right? We know that. The political reality is if we said it's not going to happen, mandate would immediately bring up huge opposition. So that's why we said promote and encourage. I mean, this legislature could mandate it, but I don't think they will. They don't like doing those kind of things.
I didn't know if, how we.
Only accountability measures.
I just didn't know how we promote and encourage.
Mandate certain things, but not those kind of things. What?
I just didn't know how we would promote. I mean, now the legislature's what are they gonna think to that? I mean, I think it'll have dialogue and it'll have conversation, but are we hoping for them to increase funding? I think is what you're getting at for buses.
And review state policies that would, for this, maybe there'd be some transportation policies. I'm not, actually, in terms of funding is for sure. Beyond that, I'm not exactly sure. That needs to be researched. I don't know exactly what policies need to be changed, but my understanding is there's some transportation policies that probably need to be changed or could be, changed. So that's the idea of reviewing it. Even if it's just kicked over to the State Department of Education and they do a review of the transportation policies.
I think it's great, and I think a conversation would be
maybe
great.
they will, and if it gets that far, maybe nothing, and that we've let the budget people know, and JFAC or wherever else in the legislature, that hey, we want more money if we're going to have buses with belts in them because they're more expensive.
On the funding side, and I'm going to put Katie on the spot a little bit. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, and that's okay if you don't. On the funding currently, I think they reimburse us 85% on our buses over 12 years. Is that based on our purchase price, do you know, or is that based on some
It's based
state number?
on the state number. They decide what
a bus should
the
cost.
value of a bus or what a bus should cost. So
And do you know, are they realistic with that number, or?
it's not 100%. I think the 80-something is 89% sounds about right. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think the cost of the bus is maybe even a little bit lower, so they kind of don't quite get to the full cost from both ways. So
Okay, so they pay 85% of a number that's too low.
yeah, and it's not super low. It's
Right.
just
A little
not
low.
the same
Okay.
cost we pay.
Right, okay.
But I would have to look it up to verify that.
And so what Tom is proposing then is that we provoke, in support of this, that we provoke a little evolution in their thinking. I don't know that we can say evolution, though. In any case, I support it. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Well, if it's 85%, then hopefully they'll raise the amount, right? 85% of a higher amount. That's what I'm trying to get to on this,
Got to start somewhere.
So Tom, the motion would have to be to approve, to recommend the resolution on seatbelt safety in school buses be presented to the ISBA, or?
Yeah, I'll make the motion as you just worded it. Or else somebody else wants to make the motion, that's fine, actually, since I'm talking about it. Nobody does? I will make that resolution on that we, the Coeur d'Alene School District, how do we say this, Lynn? Submit this resolution to ISBA on seatbelts in school buses, or thereabouts.
I'll second that.
You can work on the wording there.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you, Tom.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for your, I will try to work on the other one that I know nobody's excited about it, neither am I, but I'm just trying to.
And thank you for putting up with us, okay?
Okay, we were doing good on our time. We were way ahead. Now we're right on schedule again, but let's pick it up. So item G is novel recommendations. Dr. Nelson, we have 3 of these. We saw them last month.
Chair Morris Rowe, you're asking me to pick it up?
Yes.
I'll do my best. Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board, we have 3 items for action for consideration for you. The first is a title that was actually presented to you back in April. It's the title Black Like Me, and believe it or not, our rationale had grade 10 on it. Our review from committee had grade 10 on it, but it was always the teacher's intent that it be reviewed at grade 9. Not sure how we lost or dropped the ball along the way, but we represent Black Like Me tonight for consideration for action at grade 9, which would just be an adjustment of the grade level. In terms of our ad hoc content committee, they had no feedback as to whether the grade level would be inappropriate at 9. The other 2 titles were on 30-day public review for you, Brave New World and The Heart of Darkness. No written comments were received.
If there's no questions, the motion would be to approve the novel recommendations as presented.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Dr. Nelson, new curriculum adoptions.
Yes, once again, Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, members of the board. This has been a long process. We started looking at new materials for K-5 social studies, career and technical education, and fine and performing arts back in October. And over the course of piloting in the classroom, reviews by our content committees and our ad hoc committees, we've come to the conclusion that the titles in front of you this evening be recommended at their prescribed grade levels. We again have had all of these titles available for preview at the district office. We've had a few people stopping in, but no written comment.
Okay, the motion here is on page 355. It would be to approve the K-12 Fine and Performing Arts, K-5 Social Studies, and 8-12 Career and Technical Education curriculums as presented.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Since it's our annual meeting, we need to approve our advisory committees that we have. Is there a particular motion on this, Lynn? Yes, thank you. 364. So motion would be to approve the following members for the 2017-18 Ad Hoc Literature Committee. And that
So
list of folks is on 364.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, looking for a second? Second.
I second that.
Yes. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on this ad hoc committee? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Now, Dr. Nelson, didn't they make it through everything?
That would be nice.
No?
This is an ongoing process. The biggest thing that we have done is every title that was on our prescribed list 3 years ago now has been totally renewed and revetted against the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts and Literacy. But this is still
Now
an
it's just
open
new
process.
titles.
Right. So we will be reopening the opportunities for our content committee teachers to provide new titles that they find intriguing and that would better align with our standards. We will have 2 different windows that will be presented for our teachers this next year, and we'll present those to you, take them through ad hoc, and present them probably all in one piece for this coming year. So there'll be 2 times for information and action that those will come to you this next year.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Town, on our other committees, long-range planning, I think, is the only standing one we have at this point. We'll do those in the fall after they add to their list.
They've found new members.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, Dr. Cottle, we have policy for action tonight, section 7000, which I believe we looked at in a policy workshop and last month.
Yes, Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board. We actually had, you're correct, we had a workshop earlier this spring on this large section. And then we had our second reading. Well, today is our second. Yeah, today is our second reading, and it's here for action. It is quite lengthy, so if you have any questions, I'd probably defer a lot of them to Katie Ebner, who'll be able to answer those as she worked with on the policy with Tambra. Sorry, I can't speak this evening. Too much listening, I think. So are there any questions?
The blue lines were added. We're at in this process.
Yes,
I
part
can't
of it is
remember.
we're a little bit behind in the ISBA process, and so this is something that we should have done last school year. And so you will see some added red, you'll see the red that was there, and then some added blue language in blue is new language that we just received from ISBA. So that language will be new to you this evening.
There was one change from the having it out for public review. We had a director comment on it, so.
And the blue portion is under 7407.
So, Board, is there any questions? We can go by policy. We've seen this a couple times. I have one or two.
Well, it seems to me the only concern was in relation to having good fiscal controls. We talked about this of some of the organizations that raise money and run the money through your office. I mean, some of these, you know, I was thinking specifically, for instance, something like Sorensen Sorte, where they raise huge amount of money. And are there adequate fiscal controls on that? That was one of those kind of questions.
So the soiree is run by an independent parent organization with the school, and so we wouldn't have any oversight for that operation as the school district, but they end up giving a check to the school when it's all over. At that point, it becomes under the school district's accounting system and accounted for with all of our policies and procedures.
So if they decide they want to spend money, that group decides when they want to spend money on, well, they do it, Sorensen, juggling equipment, right? They do that kind of stuff. The district would be writing the check for that. It's not, that group wouldn't be writing the check.
So currently, the district is writing the check. The check, all the proceeds from the fundraiser are just turned over with one payment to the school district, and then put into the Sorensen Magnet Funds. There's a committee, Magnet Fund Committee at the school that's comprised of teachers, the principal, and members of the organization that runs that event every year. And they kind of go through, they create a budget and they make decisions as things come out throughout the year. They meet regularly in order to kind of manage those funds. But the district is writing a check. The district purchasing system is used, all of the internal controls and that sort of oversight. It's part of our audit at the end of the year, so.
Okay, that was the only question I had, was of those kind of similar organizations. That's the one that comes to mind because they have so much money, but there are other ones that are in the district.
And I think there's a difference. That one is, every different parent organization is run a little bit differently by the school. It's just the level of parent involvement, or, you know, if they have someone who's very knowledgeable about accounting procedures, maybe they want to be the treasurer and run kind of a purchasing system on their own end. But we have to kind of be careful when we look at whose money is it? Is it the districts? Have they turned over a check, or is it still belonging to the parent organization and it's still subject to their discretion, their decisions? And at that point, we cannot make decisions or subject them to our policies and procedures. So,
Is there a number for? Is there a number of amount of money that over that amount of money we have to be involved? Even if it is a parent organization?
No. If it's a parent organization, it's up to the parent organization whether or not they'd like it to be accounted for by the school district, or if they'd rather keep it on their end. So There's no threshold or anything. It's if the parent organization is fundraising it, they are in charge of whether or not they pass it over to us or hang on to it and account for it on their end.
And Kate, I can clarify just a little bit. They raise that money through a nonprofit. They're a 501c3, so that money is independent. And when people donate, they know they're donating to that specific nonprofit. And so I think that's under magnet policy and how they can, how the district manages or not manages, sits with those funds. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that was the reason a number of them have changed from PTAs, or they all did, from PTAs to PTOs, right? Was to have that separation.
Yeah, that is a big difference. If it's a 501c3, the donors are able to deduct it on their taxes. If it's a PTA, they wouldn't be able to necessarily. So.
And didn't the PTAs fall under district oversight to some degree, or no?
No,
Okay.
neither organization does.
Okay.
And Booster Club money?
Booster clubs are independent as well.
I have a confidence in you. I have confidence in you. I'm not sure I have confidence in all the people out there, but I have confidence in you that you have control over this situation.
Yeah, and it just comes down to whether or not these are individual organizations. They may have a board, and do we have jurisdiction over them? No, they've created their own organization. They're fundraising on their own time, and hopefully they're not. The only thing we'd get involved if they were saying that they were operating under the school district when that's not true. So we do want to try and maintain the appearance or keep it clear that if the money is going to the school district, it's being accounted for by the school district, and it's under our policies and procedures. So.
Do you have the policies in front of you?
Yes.
So on page 373, which is policy 7115, it was formerly 814.
Yeah.
That second section there, monthly treasurer's report will be prepared showing receipts, expenditures, and cash balances in each budget account of the district. That was all struck. And could you just give me an idea why or what, or we just shown that a different way, or I know the wording's changed around there, so.
Just the way that it was worded, it wasn't using accounting terminology correctly, the way I was reading it, so I just kind of changed it around to how we currently report the treasurer's report and have accounting terminology used correctly.
And so that's in the new language up above, the expenditures, revenues, all that, okay? On page 376, it's policy 7210. It's the second to the last paragraph there, where it starts out, the superintendent or designee in cooperation with the district's accountant shall prepare the required MD&A.
Yeah.
Is that done with the accountant? Is that done with the auditor? Or is that our district accountant? Is that Magnuson McHugh? I was a little confused who that person was.
I think ISBA is saying our Magnuson McHugh, the district's accounting firm. So.
Okay.
Because the superintendent or designee in this situation is the district's accounting staff, the director of finance. So
can we just
designee,
reword that to make that
we can.
more clear? Whether it's accounting
Accounting,
firm or.
Yeah.
And I hope I have one more on page 392. There's just a bunch of stuff that was struck out. I assume this is maybe adjusting policy to match practice, but.
Yeah, we currently don't report this. I'm not, and just looking at it, I'm not so sure that it would be useful information, so.
This has to do, I think, with student activity funds, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a little bit about what Tom was talking about, and those funds, and just making sure we have proper control of those funds. And
Yeah, we have a number of internal control procedures that the schools are followed. I evaluate the schools on those internal control procedures. The schools' accounting systems are part of our annual audit, and their procedures as well, not just their actual work, the check vouchers, the supporting documents that go with every check they write. It's their procedures on managing everything too.
then there was another policy where we talk. Oh, it's the dollar amount when board approval is required for purchases. Did that change? We increase that amount from 10,000 to 25,000?
That was the comment from a director. We put that in there as blue line because we received a comment that the $10,000 limit was kind of impeding his ability to operate, especially with regards to E-rate contracts. If you don't get those in place quickly, you can lose out on E-rate funding. So I think that was the main concern there. And this paragraph right here is actually specific to Coeur d'Alene School District. ISBA doesn't have that at all. And I think it was a historical, the board asked for it before my time. So it's something that we thought if we raise the limit a bit, it might help out.
I lied that I was done. I have a few more. Page 412 is policy 7403. And we added a third item there.
That is Idaho code. We have a really great Idaho code that was written specific to school districts that we are allowed to void checks after 2 years. And that is only for school districts, which is really neat.
And keep the money? You
And
don't have
keep
to
the
turn it
money.
over to, okay, that was my question. Do we have to turn that over to unclaimed
Nope.
property?
No, we were doing unclaimed property until we realized that that was part of code just specific to school districts, so.
Okay. Do we need to add a or at the end of number 2? Because it's or. Sorry, I wasn't as thorough with these before, I don't think. The only other one I had, I think, was, and I talked to Lynn about this a little bit beforehand, but it's page 424. It's policy 7430. It talked about out-of-district travel. And there was a line in there that was, board members shall obtain board approval prior to incurring out-of-district travel expenses. And that was struck. And I guess that was more just adjusting policy to practice, I think.
I think so. I don't remember exactly that one.
And do we, I don't have concerns necessarily with this group sitting here, but I was just wondering, in the past, has that been something that's been an issue, or someone said, well, I'm going to
I don't think so
such and
because,
such, and-
yeah,
okay.
it's still reported on, with internal controls, you want to either have controls on the front end or the back end. You want detective controls, and the district has really great detective controls on travel, so I think we're kind of good there.
Okay, is there any other questions?
You objecting to trips we might be taking here?
Maybe.
No trips to Cancun.
Just kidding.
Okay, so then I think we need to make a motion to approve policy section 7,000 as presented with a few minor edits. Is that right, Lynn?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the only upcoming event we have scheduled outside of our regular August meeting is the ISBA Summer Leadership Institute. That's on July 27th, I believe, in this room. Yes. Okay. And too late to sign up, or if someone hasn't signed up?
Sent the registration today, but
Okay.
there would still be time if someone's interested.
Okie dokie. And that's a half-day session, I believe, or a couple hours.
1 to 6.
Nope. Okay.
As far as ISBA resolution, if I rewrite this, we have to find some time to get together, even just briefly.
Yeah, I think we shoot for that week, maybe of the 24th. You're gone, and you're, Dave, when do you,
I'll be back on the 22nd, so that would work for me.
Amber, when do you go? Takes 4, right? Takes 3.
It could be,
Phone in.
I'll be here, yeah. I
Okay.
can phone them.
Okay. We'll go,
Week of the 24th, you want to shoot for the 24th?
sounds good to me,
It's a Monday, correct?
right?
Sure.
July 24th.
I'll have it soon. I'll have it
We
this week.
do like 9 o'clock? Does that work for everyone?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it'll be 9 o'clock at the district office, maybe, possibly.
sure. Maybe we'll come up with another reason.
We could.
You never know. It could be something good. Okay. If there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.